world, as it were, and I wanted to give him an opportunity to share about a place few people have heard of, much less visited. David, good morning to you.
Good morning.
David, tell us about this trip to, did I pronounce the country name correctly?
Correctly.
Nepal?
Nepal is correct.
If I look at the globe, where is this?
Well, actually, if you know where India is and you know where China is, it's
Right.
on the northern border of India, just in the Tibet area or region of China.
And who lives there, and what kind of people?
Okay, the culture and the society is not like, from what I'd seen, it's not like the Indian society from India. It's really not a caste system. Actually, it's a democratic republic where the people actually govern the country. But I would say 95% of Nepal is in the Himalayan mountain ranges. There's very few flat spots in Nepal.
So where do you fly into?
Actually, we flew from San Antonio to United Arab Emirates, and from there we flew over to Kathmandu. Kathmandu is the capital of Nepal. Now, Nepal is an extremely mountainous range, but certain parts of it has valleys, and Kathmandu is a pretty large region of valley within that mountain range.
Why did you go over there?
The Lord has called me on a different mission trip. He's called me to go to all parts of the earth, and I literally, Tim, I have been. I've been to like the Philippines 7 times, South America, Central America, all over Europe and Asia. Africa. Well, last year we was almost 3 weeks in China with Mike Pittman, and he's called me there because Jesus said that he will not come back until the gospel is preached to all corners of the earth. And God's got a calling on my life. In January, I'm heading to the Philippines again. I've been to you. How many times in Israel? 3 times? Yeah, 3 times in Israel. So, and then later, we're going back to Cuba again. I've been to Cuba before, but God's called us. And
tell us about these people in Nepal here. You mentioned that it's not the caste system, so it's not exactly like India. It's a country between India and China. What's the religion of the people there, basically?
It's primarily Buddha and Hindu. And boy, those are interesting religions. When I went over there, I decided I was going to know a little bit about that. And both of those religions are fundamentally good. They're driven by people being good. But the problem is they're man-made religions, and there's no method of salvation under being good. Mm-hmm. So there's primarily Hindu and Buddha. Now, we did in our mission, in the process, we did run into some Buddha, and the Buddha were very nice. The Hindu were a little more aggressive, not wanting their people to know much about Christianity. Mm-hmm. But the Buddha...
Buddhist, is that who worship Buddha? Is that
yeah.
The Buddhism.
The Buddhists, they believe that there's many gods. Anybody can be a god. Anything could be a god. And one of my challenges is, so anything could be a god. Could my cell phone be a god? Yeah. And so we talk.
So what did you tell us about your witnessing and your sharing? I know you went over there for that purpose. Tell us how do you do something? And tell us about you were mentioning to me about the terrain these people live on. And such. Yeah.
The terrain is fantastic, I'll tell you. Like I said, 95% of Nepal is in the Himalayan mountains, and as you well know, it's the highest place on the earth. So there were a few flat spots, and boy, wherever there was a flat spot, they would make a small city. But the rest of this, people will find a way to survive. It was absolutely fascinating. They call them the sure-footed people of Nepal, because we were walking on the edges of cliffs, and they would find any form of a slope, and they would terrace that slope, and they would make a garden or something there. It's kind of interesting too. The terrain was so radical, and they were not thin people. They were well fed. They took care of themselves. They're agrarian, but they would bring in a spot maybe 10 by 10. And they'd bring a young calf in there, and they'd feed that calf to the day it died. Its world was that 10 by 10 spot, but there wasn't any place for it to go. I mean, if they took too far, it'd fall off of a cliff, and they seemed to make it work, you know.
How much witnessing and how much sharing of the gospel did you guys get to do?
Oh, we just climbed the hillsides, and we had one team that went into orphanages and schools and shared the gospel, and we went from one house to another, and these houses
Literally? From one house to another?
Yeah, and here's the deal. It's not like what you might be familiar with. These people would find a way to live on the side of a mountain. Literally, if they was sleepwalking, they wouldn't be alive.
How high were you?
We were probably around 23,000 feet high.
You were what?
23,000 feet in the air.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. It's pretty neat. So we would be walking along, and I had my own translator, and then they're serious about Christianity there. These people, these church people, are dead serious. It's not a profession. It's a way of life for these pastors. It is something they do 7 days a week. They go out onto their communities, and it's really interesting. So we had our own guide and our own interpreter, and he would be the first day I went up there. We went high, real high, and every place we met somebody, we shared the gospel of Jesus Christ. And
how'd they react? They ever heard of Jesus?
That's a good question. Most of them, we got permission to talk about Jesus. So once we got permission, then we shared the whole gospel down to the point of, do you want to give your life to this God that I'm talking about? And we had a tremendous, probably a 75% conversion rate that would accept Jesus Christ. And Tim, I talked to you a little bit about their attitudes, happiness. First day I was there, it seemed like we'd never quit walking. We finally ended up on the top of the world, and they were building a small house up there, and there was a lady, probably in her mid-20s, carrying 150 pounds of stones on her back. They didn't have machinery. They had human labor. And she had this big basket on her back carrying, and older women, I couldn't carry the load they were carrying, but calling us around, and they all had a smile on their face. So I said to my interpreter, ask them why they got a smile on their face. And they said, and she did, she says, oh, we must be happy. We must be happy in everything that we do. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost like an attitude, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So yeah, we got a couple minutes left. Just one more question for you. So, were you able to leave? I mean, were you able to leave a Bible with them, or I mean, are you just witnessing and moving? Because how would they ever have any growth?
Okay, that's a good question. That's the thing I really liked about this. I mentioned that their church and their pastors were really serious about this. Yes, everybody got a Bible. We had hundreds of Bibles.
In their language?
In their own language. And then we, at the end, when we'd asked them, did they know what happened? Who would you recommend us to? We actually took names, addresses. And so these pastors and these church people are going to go back and witness to these people, take them to a local church. They're going to have adequate follow-up. Yes.
Okay. You wanted to mention your book before you've written a book that folks might be interested in. Yeah.
It's called Something to Consider. I used to use it. I used to do a lot of deer hunting. I spent a lot of time by myself, and the reason why I do that, I just have the belief that people are so busy, either doing this or that, or their face in front of a screen, that they don't have a chance to listen to what God has to say. And this is one of the things that I spend every morning on a walk, listening. What God do you want to say to me today? And I've written a lot of stuff. Well, this book, I really believe, is God's truth that he wants to share with you. And it's called Something to Consider. And it was a carefully chosen title. My wife, she said that because I would share these things. I say, this is something I think you ought to consider. So I'm going to read just quickly. Chapter 1 is the Old and New Testament. Chapter 2, A Reason for Truth and Righteousness. Chapter 3, tithing and giving. And then 4, a rationale for the existence of good and evil. And then number 5, blessings and miracles. Here's a good one. What could anger Jesus? Wouldn't you want to know?
What could anger Jesus?
What could anger Jesus?
How can people get a copy of this?
And then I need help. And then here's the one, Tim, I got to mention. It's called Acts of Forgiveness. This country is enslaved by not forgiving.
Yeah.
They're enslaved by anger, which is a natural consequence of not forgiving. So acts of forgiveness, and Jesus said, if you love me, right? And then there's 2 chapters on the Islam religion in there, which I think everybody should know. How can you get a copy?
Yeah.
It's called Something to Consider by David Leatherman, and you can get it on Amazon. And there's been a lot of them sold.
You're the Leatherman.
Leatherman.
Thanks for sharing that trip with us, David. Appreciate it. And sharing the gospel there with the people of Nepal.
All right.
You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio